Texas Senator Ted Cruz said on Monday that he will introduce legislation aimed at preventing the controversial practice of separating immigrant families along the border. While these cases are pending, families should stay together. Children belong with their mothers and fathers. Cruz, who was up for re-election in November, said in a statement, Cruz's proposal, according to a release from his office, will require immigrant families detained along the border to remain together absent aggravated criminal conduct or threat of harm to the children. It would also require that asylum cases are adjudicated within 14 days, approve new temporary shelters for immigrant families, and increase the number of immigration judges. All Americans are rightfully horrified by the images we are seeing on the news, children in tears pulled away from their mothers and fathers. This must stop. Now we can end this crisis by passing the legislation I'm introducing this week, Cruz added. Now, I've made it abundantly clear, whether it was on net neutrality or being bought out, I have very little love for Cruz, if any at all. And it was not helped by the fact that throughout this whole year and the latter part of last year, he's been challenged by Beto O'Rourke, who is one of the few members of Congress that I actually think, if put into a higher position, would serve not only his state well, but just the U.S. But that's a story for another day. But the reason I bring that up is because I've tried to make it abundantly clear as well that I'm not a partisan hack. So if it's not a Democrat introducing something, if it's not a Republican, it doesn't matter to me. It's so long as the policy seems interesting in terms of getting something that I'm in favor of, I'll back it. I don't care who's giving it out. So if Cruz is serious about putting out some legislation that stops these families from being torn apart, he has my support. The one line in there you need to just pay a little bit more attention to, because I know when I read this stuff, people get a little antsy. They don't want to hear out the whole thing, or they're just going, okay, he's reading this. All right, okay. There's a line in here about the qualifications for staying absent aggravated criminal conduct or threat of harm to the children. So when I think of aggravated criminal conduct, I'm thinking of, assault or battery or some other, I guess you are those two are the same things, but something that is in the way of beyond just coming over here illegally. And I swear to you, I can already see it just in headlights. We're going to have most likely Republican members of Congress who are going to say, but jumping over the border is aggravated criminal conduct. They're breaking the law. I can already picture it happening. And the only reason I don't accuse Democrats is because this is one of the issues where, at least in terms of their rhetoric, they're more to the point on. I've already talked about Obama doing the same practices as Trump, except, shh, be very, very quiet. But just in from what I've seen of people on both parties, when they talk about issues relating to immigration, especially when it's done illegally, you're going to get at least a more sympathetic tone when it comes to Democrats. Now, that tone needs to be followed by backing this legislation. And if they do it, I will, if he does it, that'll be one more point for Cruz at the end of his Senate career, which is, I would love for it to be in a few months, but most likely it's going to be another 6 years. I'll be able to point out, oh, he did this one bill that was really good, or started that. Now, getting it to the White House and through the House of Representatives is also something he would have to worry about. And that's kind of the saddest thing about giving them the benefit of the doubt, when you say, oh, this member of Congress that's on this other party is doing something I like for once. Then you run into the fact that a lot of times when you get a person of one party to come over and do something that is kind of forward thinking, or at least rational from your perspective, you get these people involved who for the life of me, I could never figure out. They practice the partisan games, and when they take a position that's relatively unpopular, uh, except maybe with their own party or with what they believe is their base or their group of supporters, they call it standing up for their principles. But when you sit there and you watch them argue against, uh, keeping these families together, you almost get shocked. You think to yourself, you're living in some bizarro world. People are actually opposed to this. So we'll see what happens this week. It's a promising start, and when I coming from me in regards to him is I think is saying something.